contact the witness, Mr. Gibson?
I did contact him. He's very feeble. He's under medication. It said that he did not feel like testifying. He was sleepy. And he reminded me that I do have an affidavit as to what he might say anyway that's notarized. So he was not willing to get out of the sick bed. And his testimony basically, he was my employer and I'm a good guy. And, you know, that he saw me and Ezekiel at work a couple times. And that's basically what he's going to say.
Okay. So other than yourself, then, you have no other witnesses?
No, just myself, Your Honor.
Okay. And you'll take the witness stand if you would, please?
Sure.
Raise your right hand, Mr. Gibson. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the whole truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right. Please be seated.
My glasses, I'm sorry.
Did you turn your cell phone off?
That's what I was checking. I didn't want to face the eye of Judge Willie for having it ringing.
Or lose it? Okay, state your name, please.
My name is Wardell Donald Gibson.
Okay. You're going to have to testify in a narrative form because it's impractical to ask a question and then ask yourself to answer it. So I will give you some leeway as to the manner in which you present your testimony, subject to Ms. Martin's objections, of course. So go ahead.
Okay. I'm Wardell Donald Gibson. I am the parent of Ezekiel Gibson, Ezekiel Wardell Gibson. What I'd like the court to know is a little bit about me, other than some snippets of what you've heard and some of what I believe to be complete falsehoods of how Ms. Martin wants to project me. I have I'm 61 years old. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, was very active in my school and church. I was Boy of the Year for Boys Clubs of America for the Northwest Regional District. I was class president of a high school that I was only of one of two different African-American families there, yet I was elected president of the school.
What high school did you go to?
John Marshall High School in Southeast Portland. I was active in athletics, was active in band and orchestra, and was in the All City Orchestra, third trombone, first chair, I believe it was, all those years ago. I attended Pacific University. I was in the Upward Bound program for disadvantaged youth. My father and my mother came to the Portland area during the World War II, worked in the shipyards, lived in Vanport, moved to the home that our family still owns, only to be flooded out by Johnson Creek. But we were taught to be truthful, believe in God. My father was a minister. I guess this rubbed off on me as I'm a deacon at my church and very devoted to my faith. I met Miss Martin one day. I was #1 salesperson in America for Electric Mobility, the Rascal Scooter Company, which are the kind of the Cadillacs or the Rolls Royces of handicapped vehicles for those people who are physically impaired and cannot walk for a myriad of different reasons. And I was on my way to work, had stopped by a bank, and I met Miss Martin, and she was walking across the parking lot, and I saw her. Bumped into her at a restaurant, saw her again a few minutes later, and I just thought it was peculiar that we kept bumping into each other. I asked her at that time, would she mind going out with me? She agreed. Subsequently, a couple days later, we did go out and have a dinner, and based upon that, we formed a romance, and it was, you know, I mean, I wasn't trying to find somebody at that time. It just happened. And so we were together about a year or so, and then I was informed that she was pregnant. And there was some, you know, not clear on who the father might be, whether it might be myself or it might be somebody else, as she had broken up with Mr. Patrick McEachran, and there was some, in my mind, who the father might have been. As it turned out, as Mr. McEachran is Caucasian and I'm African American, it was pretty obvious that the son was mine. And we've had a turbulent relationship, as the court knows, ever since. I've tried to do the right thing. All I've tried to do is to be a father to my child, any way I can, and be able to be with him. And I think that I've got valuable things to teach my son. After all, I was Boy of the Year. Mr. McEachran was not. And I know what that's about. And fishing and game playing and pool and basketball and tennis and track and all these kinds of activities, recreational athletic activities that I excelled in, as well as political activities. And so I think I have a lot to offer my son, but I have been systematically denied access to my son for the life of me, other than my Christian beliefs. I can't figure it out. I've been accused of being abusive. I've never abused this woman. I was with her for 2 months before I overheard her in a conversation on the phone talking to one of her so-called students. And when I asked, "Oh, student, I didn't know you were a teacher," she says, "No, one of my black belts." "What do you mean one of your black belts? Like in karate?" She says, "Yes." That she was a black belt instructor, had her own school in Nevada for a number of years, and that she had trained over 30 police officers to be black belts, and had a school for self-defense for women. And so I asked her, "Well, why didn't you tell me this? You're going to tell me this now after a couple of months?" She says, "Well, if I told you that, you probably wouldn't want to date somebody that can kick your butt," as she put it. And we kind of laughed about it, but we went on and had this relationship. So when she's talking about I'm so abusive to her and she's had to run and hide and in fear, it's just a lie. It's just unbelievable. Other than the fact that she wants to be with Patrick and not me, that's fine. She can be with Patrick. Let them be together and have a relationship. But here's what happened. When on one of these visits that the court ordered us to have, Ezekiel and I were sitting, we were watching TV on a big screen TV set. And we'd been playing video games and all that, and we were watching TV, and I smelled something. And it smelled like he had something going on in his pants. And I asked him about it. "Oh, no, Daddy, I just," to use the F word, I had I don't know if I can say it in the court, I just farted. And I said, "Oh, no, Ezekiel, it smells worse than that." No, Daddy, that's what it is." Well, up until this time, he had never, ever, ever lied to me, ever. And so I was going to see how far this was going to go, because I knew that he'd messed in his pants. So finally it got to reek so much that I said, "That's it, Ezekiel, we're going to the restroom." So I went into the restroom, pulled down his pants, and there was this big clump of poop in his pants. And I said, "Ezekiel, why'd you lie to me about the poop?" He says, "Because I don't care." I said, "What do you mean you don't care?" He says, "All my life, you and Mom have just fought over me. And maybe if I kill myself, you'll have nothing to fight about." This came out of a 5-year-old little boy. I says, "What?" And I picked him up and I hugged him and I says, "Ezekiel, you don't need to be thinking like this. And it's our fault. And I'm going to fix it." He says, "You're going to fix it, Daddy? How are you going to fix it?" I says, "I don't know, but I'm going to call your mother." And I did. And I called her and I says, "Look, you and I have our disagreements. And we have our fights. And we have this situation in the court. And that's going to go how it's going to go. But I'm no longer going to be fighting with you and arguing with you around Ezekiel when we drop each other off and all that kind of stuff, because all it's doing is destroying him. He threatened to kill himself if we don't stop. And I'm done." And I was done. So she didn't quite believe that at first, I guess, because she still wanted to continue with the bickering, and I wasn't going to do it. And I guess she figured out I'm not going to play. The next thing I know, she's inviting me to go out with some outings with her, Ezekiel, and I. She wanted to go to a movie in the park situation. Okay. She wanted to spend the 4th of July of 2009 at the Portland waterfront to do the fireworks. And we did. And Ezekiel was so happy. His mom and I were going to take him someplace together and have fun. We spent the whole day out there. The sun was hot. There's all kinds of bands. We looked at the fireworks. We had a great time. And at that time, she was saying, well, you know, Wardell, this court thing, what we should do, since we're getting along so well, is write a letter to Judge Ruley saying that we don't need no longer do this, because all we're doing is spending all of our money on lawyers and on court costs, and neither one of us can afford that, and we can just quit doing this. And I thought, I don't know about that. And so I had already received a letter from this court that had delayed, had set aside the court custody trial, I think from that time until October. And I had already saw that in the mail that day or the day before, and she had not yet seen hers. So, but she was trying to persuade me to drop this proceeding. And I wasn't wanting to do that. The other thing that I was concerned about was Ezekiel's pooping in his pants all the time. And I was concerned about that, and I was concerned about her breastfeeding him up to age 5 or 6 years old. I didn't think that was appropriate. She convinced me that some mothers do that. It bolsters an immune system. And although I disagreed, and he's got teeth, you know, why are you still breastfeeding him? And so I had these concerns, but he's the mother, she's the mother, and I wasn't going to fight it too much, although I was uncomfortable with it. Then there was the setups for intervention. When she had to come back to my house, she was living at the house that she's living now at, on Alice Street, which I believe is her friend Louise Broussard's house. It was a house that her, Patrick, and Louise Broussard, and I don't know who else was living there at that time, but if that's where they are now, I know where that's at. But she had to come here to do the psychiatric reports and in Vancouver. And so she called me wanting to know if she could come over on a Sunday night, because she had to be at, I think, Dr. Kirk Johnson's or somebody's office at 8 o'clock or something in that next Monday morning. And reluctantly I said, yeah, well, come on. Well, who would have known that that night would be one of the worst snowstorms in recent Portland, Vancouver history. Worse in Portland than it was in Vancouver, but we had feet of snow, court was shut down, everything stopped. And so there she was at my house for the next several days. Well, of course, she never left. I came home one day from work, and there was a camera crew in my house. And they wanted to, and I said, what's going on? Well, it's something that, it's an addendum to my book. We're doing, taking some stuff on camera. Do you want to make a statement? So they asked me something about food. And I said, well, you know, there are certain foods that are better than others and all that. And so then why are you taking him to McDonald's and feeding him hamburgers and milkshakes? Don't you know that they're poison? You're poisoning your son and all this. And I said, what? Get out of my house. And I threw them out. Okay? A couple days later, I come, she got really upset. So a couple days later, I come home, and there's a phone call. You, Your Honor, had demanded that I pay for her phone bill or cellular bill, and I was doing that. And I was paying all the bills because she wasn't working, and I paid the bills. So there was this phone call, and you know, none of my friends called me on her phone, so it was kind of peculiar that she said there was a phone call on her phone. And I get the phone, and it is a producer for the Steve Wilkos show, wanting us to come on the show so that we could do lie detector tests and a bunch of different stuff. And my attorney at that time, Debbie Fong-Uribe, said, no, you don't need to do that. The only kind of show that you're going to do is in the courtroom. So I declined and let them know. Oh, she was upset. And so when the next couple of days when I came home from work, she was gone. And I didn't know where she was. Couldn't find her. She's not answering her phone. And she was gone that night and the next night. And finally, I got a phone call from a Mr. Ken Calvin, who said to me that Denise had been over at his house that night, trying to make herself available for sex so that she could get money from him, so that she could finance a trip to Arizona. And he's calling me because he was concerned, because she had bought a bunch of liquor, they'd been drinking, and she left at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with my son, drunk, and had taken a laptop.
Excuse me a moment.
Yes.
This information is being conveyed by whom?
Ken Calvin, you have his statement.
Okay, it's all hearsay, Mr. Gibson.
I understand, but he's got a testimonial letter from that's on file.
Again, unless they testify at the trial, their statements, prior statements filed in the file are not admissible.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay?
The fact
So-
was, an individual said that she'd been with him, they'd been drinking, and
Okay, that's hearsay, it's not admissible. So,
that
beyond that,
Okay, well, he informed me that they were on their way to Arizona, and he was concerned. So I didn't know where, what, and then, oh gosh, a month and a half later, I got a communication from her. I can't remember if it was a phone call or an email that they were in Tucson, Arizona. That was confirmed by another person that knew her. That they were in Tucson, Arizona, living in a yurt in the mud and the dirt, and that they were on the streets begging for food. And so I consulted with Miss Debbie Fong-Uribe. She said to send her some money to the address that she did, and I did. Later on, I was informed that she was coming back to Portland via an air flight, and that Ms. Fong-Uribe said that we needed to serve her to show why she'd taken off with Ezekiel and all of that. And that's what started this whole thing. And because all I wanted at that time was, to have a relationship with my son. And at that time, I was not aware that he might have been abused. But when she dropped him off at at the airport, and I had a witness there, and dropped him off at the airport, and I took him for 2 or 3 days.
excuse me, Ms. Gibson, what month and year are we in?
I understand, because this has been going on for so many years.
August 2008.
I'll accept that, although it might have been a different date. But, August of 2008 could have been. So when she was, Ezekiel was handed over to me, and then the process server served her. He came to my home, and he was so happy to be at home and around all of his things, his bicycle, his toys, his trucks, his books, his CD, all of his stuff is there. I took him to Clackamas Town Center. We went shopping. I took him to Clackamas Town Center. And at Clackamas Town Center, they have a little kiddie place where there's apparatus that kids can play on and all this. And Ezekiel, maybe 5 years old, and there was a little 2-year-old girl, and they were playing, and they crashed. And she's just a toddler in diapers, and crashed. Ezekiel fell down and started crying. I said, "What's wrong?" "She hurt me." I said, "What do you mean she hurt you? She's just a little girl." "She hurt me, Daddy. People are always hurting me." Well, I thought that was so unusual. And he told me, "I'm not the same little boy I used to be. I'm afraid. I'm so shy. I'm afraid of everybody." I took him to the evangelistic counselor, Mr. Captain Milton Alvarez, and I've been trying to get him as a witness, but he's a worldwide evangelist, and he could be anywhere in the world, and he's not returning emails or his phone, so he's on the witness list, but I couldn't bring him. But anyway, this guy said that to bring him over, and he would talk to him, and he said that based on his conversations with Ezekiel, that Ezekiel had been abused. He would need more time with him to see if it was sexual abuse, but he definitely had been abused. So I'm thinking, something happened to him in Arizona. So when she came to pick him up, I told her, something's happened to Ezekiel. He's not the same little boy he was before. And the evangelist I took him to says he's been abused, possibly sexually abused, and I can assure you I will get to the bottom of this. She said, "Sexual abuse? He doesn't know anything about that." I said, "Oh, yes, he does." And so now I had to start thinking about, well, what was going on? Because I had no clue as to who or what or where was abusing him, but there's definitely a change in my little boy. So when I found out that I had diabetes, when I had this numbness in my toes and tingling in my fingers, and I was kind of feeling of being high, and I wasn't high, I called a friend. He took me to Portland Adventist Hospital, and I thought I was having a heart attack because I couldn't, tingling in my toes. I thought maybe it had something to do with blood circulation. Well, they did every kind of test possible, and they found out that I was borderline diabetic, type 2 diabetes. Well, I thought I needed to call Denise and because I didn't know what the diagnosis was at first. All I knew is that something was wrong with me. So I called her and told her I was at Portland Adventist Hospital. and that they were doing some test, and I didn't know the result of the test, but you know, I might be here. The next morning, about 7 o'clock in the morning, I get a call in the hospital room, and it was Ezekiel. Dada, Mama said that you're in the hospital and you're dying. Don't die, Dada. I love you. You're dying. I says, no, Ezekiel, I'm not dying. I says, I've got to do some things different than I was doing before. But I tell you what, I will be out to your place this afternoon so that you can see that your Dada is very much alive and I'm not dying for some years yet. And I did. I drove out there, showed my face to him, walked him up. He was so happy to see his dad was alive and well. This is when I said to Denise, you know what, Denise? This hospital says I've got diabetes, that I need to change some of the food things I'm eating and some of this kind of stuff. And you are supposed to be this expert on food. Maybe you'd want to give me some pointers. And she said, well, okay. But first, you need to go see a naturopathic doctor that I know. And if you do that, I'll help you. And I said, okay, I'll go. She says, you will? I said, yeah. Well, you never believe anything I say, maybe you believe him. So I go out there, and he wasn't a medical doctor, he's a naturopathic doctor. I had no experience with naturopathic doctors, but I found that he had some interesting things to say. He said that he'd worked with diabetics before that were a lot worse off with me and had got them back to normal sugar levels, and they're going on with their lives. And the first thing that we need to do is do a 21-day cleanse. With different herbs and supplements and different kinds of foods and so forth, and that's what we needed to do. So when I went back to Denise's, I told her that this is what this naturopathic doctor had explained to me, and she says, well, good. I'll go on the cleanse with you. I said, you'll go on the cleanse with me? She says, yeah, I can do a body cleanse. There's some toxins in me that need to go away, and I'll go on it with you on one condition. I said, what's the condition? That you do it here at my place. I said, oh, no. Patrick lives here. We do not get along. And there's no way that I'm going to do anything here. She says to me, no, you don't understand. Patrick and I do not have the relationship that you think that we do, even though I remember there was a time when nobody knew whose baby that Ezekiel was until he was born. But that we're just business partners and we're just roommates. And if you came out here for 21 days, you would see that. So I talked to all of my friends, and everybody said, don't do it. She's setting you up. But I remembered that I had promised Ezekiel that I was going to get to the bottom of what was going on with him, and I thought, well, this might be an opportunity to see what's going on. So I came out for the cleanse. Patrick was not there. He'd gone someplace, maybe in California or someplace that he'd gone to. I don't know, but he wasn't there. And it didn't appear like any of his things were there. So we did the cleanse. In this period of time, she was saying to me, you know, we have this whole bottom area of the house that's vacant. You know, you're trying to buy a house over here. This place has got all these acres. We've got gardens. It's a good place for you to be. You can get healthy. You can lose some weight and control your diabetes and all that. So I says, okay, I'll do it. So I moved all my stuff in there and started working in the gardens. I lost about 30-some pounds in almost as many days. And my diabetes got under control. I was eating the kinds of foods, and it was pretty much a good experience until I came up into the living room area to find my son naked sitting on Patrick's lap. And I confronted him. And I says, what are you doing? Ezekiel, go put some clothes on. And I says to him, what are you, some kind of pedophile? He looked at me like a deer in the headlights and didn't really say anything. I says, I'm telling you, Patrick, I don't like that. Well, he must have talked to Denise about it, and she said, well, they're just, you know, it's not what you think. Ezekiel just got out of the bath, and they're just kind of wrestling around. Playing some game called Kill Patrick. And so this game, Kill Patrick, is where the little boys have the big squirt gun rifles or cap guns, and they squirt at Patrick. The only problem with the game is, I guess you have to be naked to play. I didn't think that was appropriate for a grown man to be playing with naked little boys. The lady that they're living with now, her grandson Rowan came down into the area where I was watching TV, butt naked, dangling. And I says, Rowan, what are you doing? Why don't you have any clothes on? He says, well, we're playing Kill Patrick. I said, you go put your clothes on. And I confronted Patrick. I said, this is it. I'm reporting you to Child Protective Services. And he said, if you do that, I'll have some friends of mine take care of you. Now, what he meant by that was he had, in his recent past, been a cocaine drug dealer. And he would go to Florida, and he'd get his drugs, and he would come back to the Pacific Northwest, and I guess in Hawaii, and sell his drugs. And he would brag about it. Now, I don't think he was doing that then, but that was his history. So when I told him I was going to report him for molesting my child, because there was another time when I caught Ezekiel coming out of his bed, and they were in there under the covers rolling around. Now, Ezekiel had on his underwear. He wasn't butt naked, but he was in the bed with this man. And I didn't like it. And that's when I told him, I'm definitely reporting you. And that's when he threatened my life. Well, he talked about some drug cartel queen that would have her people take care of me. Yeah, right. But when I checked it out, I found out there was such a person, and that some 40 people had been killed by this person, and she had, her name was Giselle Blanco. And when I did some research on her, she's somebody you don't want to deal with. And so, based upon that and her history with presidential security and this place that she'd studied and psychological stuff and AK-47s and CIA people and all this, I took it seriously. So that was precipitated. I knew I had to get out of there because I was going to report him. But my Mercedes was, the radiator was out and somebody was fixing it, and he came over to fix it, so my car had no way of getting around. So one night, I'd been working out in the garden, and it was clearing blackberry bushes. The sun was hot. I was tired. Ezekiel had come and asked me, did I want something from the store, that his mother, they were going to the store. And I says, no, but here's some money, you can buy you something. So I gave him a few dollars, and when he came back, he had some kind of toy that you put together. And Ezekiel's very, very smart. He can put things together on his own without reading directions. So that night was the night when we were watching the finale of America's Got Talent, their first season, and we were all watching, curious to see who was going to win. But at the same time, it was getting late, and Denise wanted Ezekiel to go to bed and to get ready to take a shower, take a bath, to go to bed. And so, but he wanted to finish putting together his toy. She says, no, you got to catch a bus early in the morning. You need to get ready for bed. So they go into the bathroom. Now, from where I'm sitting in my living quarters downstairs, I had a big screen TV. If I'm watching the TV as I'm facing you, if I looked over to where the green flag is here, would be about where the bathroom is. And I could see Denise in the doorway of the bathroom, and I could see Ezekiel's hands. I couldn't see his whole body because of the angle. But they were having a heated conversation about getting ready for bed. He didn't want to do it. She wanted him to do it. And I was watching, and I just thought, just let them, let her handle it. She can handle this. But she started to get red-faced and frustrated. And so then they started screaming and yelling at each other, and I thought, well, let me get up and say something. Usually if I say something to him, he'll obey. So as I got up and started to walk, about that time, I could see him swinging at her, and he was hitting her. And so I go over there and I say, Ezekiel, what are you doing? You can't hit your mother. Well, she's doing this and she's doing that. I said, I don't care what she's doing. That's your mother, and there is no circumstance that you could ever hit your mother. It's just not tolerated. Now, you get in the bath. I'm not getting in the bath. And he turned like he's going to hit me. I said, oh, no, I'm your father. You're not hitting me, buddy. Okay, so about that time, I feel this tap on my back. And it's Patrick. You heard him say, give him his space. You leave him alone. And I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? This is my son. This is his mother. We're trying to get him to understand that under no circumstances can he ever hit his mother. And Patrick says, you're just abusive. You leave him alone. And he pushes me in my back. Well, I turn, push him back. Next thing you know, we're on a bundle on the floor. rolling around, wrestling and at each other. And the next thing I know, this was the master bathroom downstairs. Adjacent to that was a guest bathroom. And that was the bathroom that Ezekiel and I used because we both had bedrooms next to each other downstairs. We ended up into that bathroom, and the next thing I know, I'm being pushed. And I push and I fall back into the shower, and I hit my head on the towel and hit my tailbone on the soap bar, and I thought I'd cracked my tailbone. I was in intense pain. As I'm trying to get out, the shower curtain is now down on me, and as I'm using the handle to pull myself out of the shower, here's Patrick stomping me and stomping me and stomping me, keeping me from getting out of the shower. I'm trying to get out of the shower. Then he disappears. I hear Ezekiel upstairs screaming, "It's my dad! It's my dad! You're hurting my dad!" And she's calling the police. She's calling the police. So this guy has gone berserk. All I want to do is to get to my son, because I don't know what he's doing. He just attacked me, I guess to show Ezekiel that the way you don't hit your mother is by attacking his father. And the guy's out of control. So I go up the staircase. Here he comes. And he's stomping me. He is on the top of the stairs. I'm trying to get up the stairs. My little boy is crying and screaming. And I'm trying to get up the staircase. And this guy is stomping me and stomping me. Then he goes back. It's a 3-level. There's a downstairs. There's a middle level where Patrick's bedroom and a bathroom and bathroom and laundry room is. Then there's another level where there's a large dining room, Denise's bedroom, the kitchen, and living room. And off of that living room, there's a sliding glass window that takes you out into the deck. So I don't know where he's gone. He's disappeared. I pick up Ezekiel off the floor. She's on the phone with the police talking about that I'm some kind of black man and that she's afraid that we're going to kill each other or whatever. And this is a 911 call. So I'm telling Ezekiel, "It's my fault, Dad. I should have just gone to the bath. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I said, "Ezekiel, it's not your fault. You're a little boy. This guy attacked me. And so it's not your fault. It's going to be okay." So the next thing I know, I put Ezekiel down. His mother picks them up, goes down the hall, goes out to the garage, out the garage door. If you go around the garage, there's a recreation area that has picnic tables. There's I believe a swing and a trampoline and stuff like that. There might be a barbecue or something. Then there's a place that I made for Ezekiel for his trucks and dirt trucks and all that to play in the dirt and the mud and all that. And that's where they were. So now I'm downstairs and I come back up and here comes Patrick again. And I'm trying to get to Ezekiel. So he's down there stomping me. This time he pulled his foot. And we roll down, and I roll down the staircase, and by a miracle of God, I'm not injured. So here he comes at me again. I go into the TV room where there's a walk-in closet, hers. The bathroom that all this started is there. You walk in there, and then there's a living area where I was watching TV. There's also a place where my office where we were doing this dome business that she was talking about. And so I'm trying to get, he won't let me out of the door. We're pulling on this door, and then he releases it. So I'm thinking, I got to protect myself. So I go and I get a hammer I've been working on the sliding glass window that wouldn't shut because the building is settling. So I had screwdrivers and nails and screws and a hammer and some wrenches, some different, because I was doing some work around the house and there was a drawer that had this stuff in it. I got the hammer thinking he's going to come down the stairs and stomp on me again. My butt is on fire from being assaulted in the bathroom. And so I go, I open the door, and here he comes. And I'm thinking, I says, "Patrick, you need to stop, or this is going to go to a place that you don't want to go." And then he goes back up the stairs. I go and I put the hammer back in the drawer, thinking this is a bad idea. And I go back upstairs to try to find Ezekiel. I find Ezekiel. He's with his mother. And I know that the cops are coming. And I tell Ezekiel, "You know what, Ezekiel? The police are coming. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and sit in the lawn chair and wait for them because bad things happen with police and people that look like me. And I don't want you to have to witness to something that you'll never forget, so I'm going to sit out there and wait." That's when I called Jordan. And Jordan, here's what's going on. This guy has attacked me. My butt's on fire. I think I have a cracked butt bone, whatever it's called. And he's saying, liar, liar, liar. And here comes the police walking up the path. And I'm talking to Jordan on the phone. Police officer asked me who am I talking to? I says, a friend of mine, trying to get her to come out here and pick me up. And he says, what's going on? Come over here, walk over here. And I gingerly walk over there because I could barely walk. And what's going on? And I told him, well, we got into a little bit of a hassle, a little tussle. My kid was fighting his mother. I tried to tell him not to. Then I get attacked by this guy who's gone crazy. And so he took me. He says, well, it just sounds like a couple of roommates are having a bad day. Do you have somebody that can maybe come pick you up and get you out of here for a while? And I said, that's what I was trying to do when you called. Next thing I know, they're being interviewed by another cop. He comes up to me and says, where's the hammer? I said, what hammer? He says, you threatened him with a hammer. I said, I haven't threatened anybody with a hammer. Where's the hammer? I said, well, the hammer is in this drawer. And so they went and got the hammer, put it in the back of the squad car, and they said that I was under arrest. Under arrest for what? What have I done? And so I was arrested, was in that stinking jail in Hillsborough overnight. That was let go the next day. And then I'm told that I can't go back to that property where everything in the world I own is there, all of my work stuff. I have only the clothes that I had on, which was you saw me, pair of jeans, a baseball cap, and a T-shirt. That's all I had when I came to your courtroom the next day. And so there I was. Now, Mr. Prentice, that's sick, was going to testify that he picked me up from the church. I went to the church and decided to tell them what had happened, and volunteered to do some work around the church grounds because I had no money. I think the only money I had in my pocket was that they took at the jail. He came, picked me up, gave me $100, took me to a motel, put me in a motel, and then hired me to work at one of his places. And that's where I was working and living when I came back to you, when she emailed me and told me that she was going to get rid of all my stuff in my car. And then you called her from this courtroom and told her she should not do that and gave me time to get my stuff out. Prior to that, Dan, who testified, went out and got me a change of clothes and some of my paperwork. And then Arliss and some other people from my church rented the U-Haul truck, went to get my stuff and all that. And that's the story. That's what's happened. And so I reported him to CPS for playing with my child naked. And I'd done a lot of research and reading and found out that when children are molested by adult men, they have these kinds of behaviors. Because I hadn't put it together until then. I thought maybe it's something that happened in Arizona. But now I knew what was going on. The reason I knew it is when Ezekiel and I went to the Clackamas town center, there's a wishing well where you throw in money and make wishes. And so I gave him some money so he could throw in and make a wish. I said, what's his wish? Well, every time we go there, it's the same wish all the time. And the wish is that his mother and father would quit fighting and that we could be a happy family again. And I says, okay, well, I don't know that that's going to ever happen because your mother's with Patrick. And I hate Patrick. So, well, what do you mean you hate Patrick? And he started crying. I hate him. That's when I took him. I think that was the time when I took him to see the evangelist. And so then I start putting two together. Could Patrick be sexually assaulting Ezekiel? Is that what's going on here? So I started making some inquiries. I went to CPS and told them what I thought, that there are 2-3 different occasions that I caught him with my child inappropriately. The time with this young child, Rowan, where she's staying now, that's Louise Broussard's grandson, and he'd come down and was running around naked, talking about they're playing a game called Kill Patrick, and you apparently have to be naked to play. I just thought that was appropriate. I was thinking, is there any circumstance that I could think of where I would have some naked little boys playing some kind of game with him? And it was just totally inappropriate. And so I went and had somebody take me as a witness out to Child Protective Services in Hillsborough, and I reported it. And they elected to do nothing. I went out there a second time. They elected to do nothing. That's when Arliss, when I told her what was going on, she says, "What? Let me go out there." So she went out there, and we reported it again, and nothing seemed to have happened. And so I'm like, what's going on here? Isn't this about Ezekiel? You know, why won't somebody listen? If there's something going on inappropriate in that house, somebody needs to know about it. This is my little boy. This is his life. And and so here she comes up with all this stuff about how I'm abusive when it's her boyfriend that's abusing my child, and I'm outraged by it, and so is everybody else. It's maddening. And so if I get a little excited and I'm accused of being this black man that's angry, yeah, I'm angry. Look what's going on with my little boy. And nobody wants to do anything about it. Yeah, I'm angry about that. But I'm not as angry as I could be, or I'd have taken care of it myself. But then I know I'd never see my son again. So I've decided to let the court work this thing out the way it should. I've been criticized for it. That had happened to my little boy. I'd have knocked it. Don't think I didn't have those, but I'm not doing that. I'm a Christian. I'm a deacon at my church. I have to behave accordingly. I'm not going to put myself in jeopardy. I'm not going to prison for somebody that's not worth it, like this guy Patrick. And so here we are. And I brought my witnesses. I want justice. This woman does not have my child in school unless she just enrolled him. Part of the psychiatric report either by Terry Vetter or the psychologist says that she would do this. And so I'm thinking, why isn't he going to school? When there's a report from his school that he's tested in the top 1% in America for intelligence for children his age, and he's not in school? You know, he's my little boy, and I love him, and I want the best for him. And I would never, ever keep his mother from seeing him, because that's his mother, under appropriate supervision, not with this guy around. But, you know, she's done everything that she can since this child was born to keep me out of his life. And I just have to think it's because I'm a Christian and they're not. And they don't believe in what I believe in. That's fine. This is America. They can believe in whatever they want. But that's my little boy. And he deserves better. And I'm finally glad I was able to tell my story. Finally. Now, I moved into a neighborhood, deliberately moved in the neighborhood that I am, in Southwest Portland, Southwest Hills, because there's a diversified school there. Hayhurst School, they've got great programs. I've been to this school. I've talked to the teachers. They've got different age students. They've got 2 different kinds of curriculums for gifted children like Ezekiel. It would be a great school for him. He can walk or ride his bicycle to that. He doesn't have to wait for a school bus at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning and take 45 minutes to get to school. He can skateboard to school, he can ride his bicycle, or he can walk to school. It's 3 blocks away. 5 blocks is the Southwest Recreation Center, where they've got workout rooms, and they've got children's programs, and they've got swimming pools, and they've got all those kinds of things for children. They've got karate classes. There's a skateboard park, tennis courts. We play tennis together. We play basketball together. We play football. Showed him how to throw a football. He was so proud that he could throw a spiral in the football. I remember one day we were going by the baseball diamond, and they were pitching a baseball. And Ezekiel says, "I can hit that ball." I says, "Really? Why don't we ask him if you can try?" So we asked him. They said, "Sure." He's a young kid. So they gave him the bat. And he stood up there, and they pitched, and bam! And he hit that ball, and it went shh. He said, "See, Daddy, I told you I could hit that ball." I mean, these are the kinds of things that we do together. You know, we spend time together. I love him. And, you know, I don't know. I haven't seen him. I don't know what's going on with him. I can't talk to him. I can't see him. I can't hold him. I can't play games with him. And all of his young life, I have been pushed aside, not being able to have time with my own flesh and blood. One of the things Ezekiel says was, when we're out and around, he'll say, "That's my dada. That's not my granddada, that's my dada." He's 54 years older than I am, but he's my dada, not my granddada. And kind of some fun about that. But I'm hurting here. I want to have a relationship with my son. I think that could best be done by having custody of my son so I know where he's at, I know where his school is, where he is, what the plays are. I do most of my work out of my home. On occasion I have to take a trip. We've got a project that we're trying to do. We're just closing the deal. There'll be plenty of money to take care of Ezekiel and the house and all that kind of thing. And there's project after project now that we've got the water contract solid and we've got projects. There's a $500 million project on the Columbia River or for the reservoirs that in the city of Portland they want to cover with tops. Some teenager peed in the reservoir and they had to drain all the water. Well, we have a Hall reactor that can remediate that water. And they don't have to spend $500 million to cover the reservoirs with tops. All they have to invest is about $50 million, and we take care of the problem. There's military bases that have these same problems. Then there's a military base, they destroy the water. When they're fracking for oil, putting hot, steamy, hot water into the ground to push the oil out, that water is poison. Birds drink it and fall out of the sky. You may have read about it. Tons of fish roll up on the seashores because they're swimming through that water that's been poisoned. We can fix that. And that's what we've been doing. That's why it's taken so long for the patents. We've got the patent. It works. There's a Kesterson reservoir where there's three-legged birds, and we can fix that. We have the technology to do so. It's taken a long time. I agree with Ms. Martin. It takes a long time for us to get there, but we're there now. And so I've got a situation now where I've got two children in the house, two teenage children. The little baby that's around here is one of the kids. They've been placed under my care because it's a safe environment for children to be. I don't understand why the state of Oregon and a couple of courts and Child Protective Services would put other children under my care, but I can't have my own son. It's ridiculous. So I'm here praying for the court to do the right thing. And that is to put Ezekiel in a safe environment where he's got children of his own age. I mean, there's all kinds of children in the neighborhood. They're skateboarding, they're riding up and down the streets on their bicycles, and they're playing, they're going to the park, they're playing baseball and football, and they're just being kids. She wants to take him on a Judge Alex show for bullying. She wants to take him to some modeling place up in Washington against the order of the court for not notifying you that she's taking the kid out of state, not once, but twice since you reprimanded her. Once to Seattle, and again over the last few weeks or a month or something, back to California again.
What personal knowledge do you have of that?
My ex, in a conversation with my ex, Denise said that she'd been to California with Ezekiel. And I've got pictures on my computer of Ezekiel in Seattle, and the Space Needle is behind him. I don't know how that could be. So, so it's it just seems. I mean, this is a woman that had her and Ezekiel's image on the TriMet buses, a full wrap advertising her book, Eating My Way to Heaven, all over that bus. I called TriMet and said, cease and desist for having my child's image on this bus as Denise and Ezekiel ride the buses, and you know that you've got all kinds of criminal activity on these buses with these gangs and so forth. They see his image and her image, put two together, and try to rob her. Yeah, she's a martial arts expert, but that doesn't matter when there's guns. And so I'm just outraged by it. And they said, well, she says that she's got custody and she can do what she wants. And I said, really? How much has she paid you on this wraparound bus that I understand are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars? And the next thing I know, that was over. So she is, in my view, using him to exploit him. And I just don't think it's right. It's just, I just want Ezekiel to have a normal childhood in a normal home around children that can come over and play. She doesn't have to have play dates by importing somebody from across the Wilsonville, because they live in the neighborhood, at least they were in a neighborhood where they're out in a rural area and there are no children to play with. So what does she do? Buys them the dog of the month. New dog every month to play with. This one didn't work, go get another one, all this kind of stuff. Well, dogs are fine. I had a dog as a little boy. That's not, but, it doesn't replace his father. It doesn't replace other children in the neighborhood that can hang out on the corner, can go to the park together. can go to school functions together and walk together and talk together and be little boys and little girls and not have to have this guy wanting to play with them naked in the house. It's outrageous. It's just outrageous. And I just, something's got to be done. I don't know what else to do. So I'm the bad guy. In her book, which I've been trying to get in evidence, you'll see she's been doing this for years. She writes about it.
Okay, cross-examination.
Oh, yes. I wanted to clear up a couple of things while they're fresh on your memory. You mentioned the Clackamas Town Center and Ezekiel throwing a coin in the fountain. And you said by this time, now you had witnessed Patrick playing games naked with the kids.
That's incorrect. That's not what I said.
Okay.
I said that when we went to the Clackamas Town Center, he would throw coins. I'd give him money, 25, 50 cents, whatever I change I had in my pocket, and he would throw it in and make a wish. And I'd ask him what he wished for, and he wished that you and I would quit fighting and we could be a family together. And I said, well, I don't think that would be possible because of Patrick. And he says, oh, I hate Patrick. And I said, why do you hate Patrick? And that's when he started to cry.
Okay, so this had nothing to do with the sexual abuse.
I didn't know at that time that your boyfriend was molesting my child. No, I didn't know.
Okay. You mentioned, and I was unaware of this, you mentioned that you came to Judge Ruley's courtroom the day after you were arrested.
No,
is that accurate? I
came to Judge Ruley's courtroom the day after you had me served by a process serve when there was a hearing for the criminal the thing that you had maliciously and falsely accused me of in Hillsborough. And while I was there, I was given a subpoena to a restraining order that said I couldn't have anything to do with Ezekiel. Even if I say his name, I'm in violation. So the next day, I come to Judge Ruley's courtroom, and I says to the judge, I have a right to contest this. Why wasn't I notified about this, something that you signed? And he says, because they couldn't find you, because something about you were in hiding. I said, you bet I was in hiding. They threatened my life, and I took it serious. And I don't mind you knowing where I am, Judge, but I don't want Patrick and Denise to know where I am. They threatened to kill me, and I took it serious.
Okay, so your testimony is when it was time to show up and advocate for your son in a restraining order hearing, you were afraid for your life, but 9 days later...
I didn't know about the restraining order hearing.
I'm still asking the question.
Yeah, I'm not going to tolerate this yelling at one another, this interrupting one another. So, we can come back next week if you want.
No,
You're either going to stop or you're going to come back at a later time. Ask the question.
You did not show up for the restraining order hearing because you were afraid for your life. Is that correct, Mr. Gibson?
I didn't show up for the restraining order because I didn't know about it. First I heard about it was when I was served by a process server at a hearing in the criminal thing in Hillsborough. That was the first time I knew anything about a restraining order.
Okay, I'll get back to that. I think it's important that we start from the beginning. You testified that we met in November 2001, and your mother died in March of 2002. Is that correct?
That would be, I would not argue with that.
Okay. And Ezekiel was born on March 9th, 2004, so the math says I conceived around June of 2003. Close. Okay, so you testified that I came to you and told you that I was pregnant, but it wasn't your child. Is that correct?
That's not correct.
Okay. Let me read it here in your the statement you filed. This is your first filing with the court on 8/2008. The relationship between the respondent and I became tumultuous and difficult after my mother's death, but the respondent became pregnant. So that was a whole year plus later, but we hung in there together. I was told that it was not my child, but I suspected that that was wrong and she was not telling the truth. So who told you that it was not
Well, Ezekiel was born 2 years, a week and 2 days after my mother passed. She passed away on March 2nd of 2002. Ezekiel was born March 9th of 2004. Now, if you recall, when I learned that you were pregnant, I believe that you told me, and I said, really? Are you telling me you gave me a bulging envelope out in my yard, and it was bulging, and I thought you were serving me with some kind of court papers because we hadn't been getting along as usual. And I opened it up, and there was these two little baby shoes and the positive results of a pregnancy test. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And I says, you telling me at age 46 you're pregnant? And you said, yeah, why, are you mad at me? I says, mad at you? This is the best day of my life. And I recall picking you up and hugging you and swinging you around. I was thrilled. Finally, I'm going to have a child.
So the question was, who told you that it wasn't yours?
Well, when I called you, I'd given you a Chrysler New Yorker to drive around, and a mink and jewels and diamonds, all kind of stuff. Anyway, and you were seen driving around with Patrick. I didn't like it, but you guys were friends. So I hadn't seen you for a couple of days, and so I called and you weren't answering your phone. So I called Patrick to see if he had seen you. And he said no, he hadn't seen you. But he didn't know I was out on the property and saw the Chrysler New Yorker parked by his trailer. And so when I opened the door and caught you two in the bed, I then had some doubts as to whether the child was mine or yours. And what happened was you got upset with me, I guess because you're offended I would think such a thing, and you took off. And I didn't see you. So, and you wanted to have this in-house birth, which I was fine with, except for at our age, I was told that there could be a problem with the birth of Ezekiel and that he needed to be in a hospital instead of having midwives in a pool in the bedroom. Okay, and I mentioned to you it might be better that he has the baby born in the hospital. And you told me that you wanted Patrick to be in the delivery room when our child was being born. I thought that was pretty odd to have
The question was, who told you that the child I was carrying was not yours?
When you wanted Patrick to be in the delivery room, when having the baby coming out of your vagina,
But you're saying in your
will you let me answer the question?
Yeah, I wish you would just answer the question. No, did anyone tell you, or did you just reach that conclusion yourself?
I reached that conclusion based on the events that were going around.
Next question, please.
So your statement here that you were told it's not true. You leapt to that conclusion. No one told you that. So where was I living at the time that you found out I was pregnant?
I don't know.
Okay, so I wasn't living with you?
No, I hadn't seen you for a couple of weeks, and you showed up with the envelope. That was the positive
thank you.
results.
I was not living with you at the time. Did we cohabit after that?
Yes.
So I moved back in with you, but you believed I was carrying someone else's child, and you were okie dokie with that.
Not until you said that you wanted Patrick to be in the delivery of the baby in the room.
So your statement that you were told at the time that I told you I was pregnant that it wasn't your child is not accurate. All of that came up months and months later when we discussed the birth.
Next question, please. Move on.
Okay. So we moved in together after I conceived. Is that correct? I was living on Carroll Street.
At some point, yes.
Okay, when I was 4 months pregnant, I went to a domestic violence shelter for a month. Why did I leave your home?
I have no idea.
No
You tell
idea.
me.
Just no idea. Okay. When I was 7 months pregnant, I lived in a homeless shelter in the basement of a church on 35th and Yamhill because I had fled your home. Do you have any testimony about what happened?
You didn't flee the home. What had happened was, that's when you started to work on me to have Patrick in the delivery room of the child at my house. And I refused to do that. And as a matter of fact, at that point, you were thinking about having the delivery at a hospital. And I told you that if Patrick was going to be in the delivery room, I wouldn't be there. So what happened next, since you opened this door, is you took off. Maybe that's when you went to some kind of shelter. I don't know. But I know what happened is about 2 weeks before the baby was due, Patrick calls me. And he says to me this is not my child. I know you think that we may have had a relationship, an intimate relationship, but we haven't had one in years. That is your child. You need to be at the hospital when the baby's born, and I will not be there.
Were you getting along with Mr. McEachern?
We're not the best of friends, but at the same time, we try to tolerate each other.
So I was not living with you at the time that I gave birth.
You were living between Stacy's place and my place, on and off. I don't recall it. I know that I was at the hospital. I believe that, no, you were at Stacy's. Because I picked you up at Stacy's and took you to the hospital. As a matter of fact, this gentleman right here is the one that took us, Ezekiel's godfather, Liddy Slider.
We'll get to that. So we weren't living together. I'm pregnant. You don't know whose child it is, but you're being a good Joe. You come to the birth, and I wasn't living with you. So then
when you say I didn't know whose child it was, I thought there was a 50-50 possibility the child would be mine. There's also a 50-50 possibility that the child could be Patrick's. You're right, I didn't know. I don't think you knew.
Okay, let's move on, please.
Okay, so the child was born, and as we were leaving the hospital, my cell phone rang, and you answered it. Do you remember that call at all?
No.
Okay. So then where did we go with the child when we left the hospital?
You took the child to Stacy's for the first couple of weeks.
That's your testimony?
I believe that's so. I might be
Okay.
inaccurate, but I don't think that you came home. I believe that you took the child to Stacy so that she could help you with the newborn baby. And it's things that women do.
Okay. So Ezekiel and I lived with you from the time of the birth until he was 10 months old. You had already read my book numerous times. You knew me well. Were you concerned about me being an abusive, hypomanic, psychotic parent?
I knew that you were bizarre, but I loved you. You were my bizarre.
Okay, but you weren't concerned for the child's safety?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. Where was your brother living at this time, your brother Gerald Jack Sr.?
He was on and off in that home and other places as he was pretty transient.
You're willing to admit that he's a career criminal heroin addict?
No, he's not.
Oh, he's not. You're not willing to admit that your brother has had a heroin problem for 25 years?
I will admit that he's been on heroin. I'll also admit that he has not been on heroin for a number of years. He has other severe health problems, and he's on oxygen, and it's basically
Did he ever
living
steal
his...
your identity and commit a crime in your name?
I will say that my brother is not the best person in the world, okay? But I'll also say he's not the worst person in the world.
Did you move him into the home while I was pregnant to help take care of me, and he was on heroin at the time?
No, I did not.
You didn't?
Move him into the home to help take care of you? Mm-hmm. Absolutely not.
He didn't live in your home with me while I was pregnant?
He was there the night that you decided to throw a TV set through the window, and he stopped you from doing that, if that's what you mean. The day that you went back next door and said that I was a large black man chasing you around the house in a murderous rage. That's
So he
the time
was
you're
living
talking
in the
about?
house.
He was there.
Okay.
It's the family home. He comes and goes.
Okay. There is a documented evidence where you apologized for that decision that you thought was really poor in
Which
retrospect.
decision?
To have your heroin-addicted brother live in the house while I was there
I
pregnant.
believe that he was living in the house. I believe that that was his mother's house. That was the house that my mother and my father built, and he comes and goes.
So
But
your testimony
he did
is
not have a room that he was living in that house, did he?
Yes, and
Where? Which room was he
I will
living
get
in?
my rebuttal information ready for tomorrow. We'll move on. Okay, so at 10 months, it's your testimony that I left for no reason, and I went to the neighbors and told them that this big black man was assaulting me, or what? What do you perceive happened? I ran out the door with a child on a Sunday night in the rain, and I never came back. Why did you
No,
deem
my
me-
testimony to Judge Ruley just a few minutes ago said that we had been watching that series called 24, and that I wanted to watch it. I'd made some popcorn. We were going to have a family thing watching the movie. You didn't want to do that, You were saying that all I wanted to do was watch TV and not spend time with you and Ezekiel. You may have had a point. So at that point, I said, fine, we can turn off the TV sets. What is it you want to do? I don't want to watch any TV. Okay, fine. We don't have to watch TV. As a matter of fact, we can get rid of the TVs. So you said, what works for me? You took Ezekiel, you went downstairs, set Ezekiel down, picked up a TV, and started to throw it through the window when my so-called heroin brother stopped you.
So it's your testimony that even though you offered to turn off the TV, I just lost it and threw it out the window.
No, I didn't say you threw it out the window. I said you attempted to throw it out the
Okay.
window when you were stopped by my brother.
But even though you were doing what I asked you to do, I just lost it and had a violent moment.
You have a whole lot of times when you lose it, which is what your book is about.
So that's your testimony.
No, it's your testimony. You wrote it in your book about all the times that you lose it.
She hasn't testified yet.
Okay, we'll get there.
All right. So I left. I went to your ex-girlfriend's house, who lived right behind you, and I asked
You
for
went
help.
to my neighbor's house.
So you deny that you had a relationship with Kathy Sullivan?
She was my neighbor. She was a friend.
You also had a romantic relationship?
It doesn't
with
matter
her?
if I had a romantic relationship with her or not. It's not relevant.
I went to your ex-girlfriend's house and I asked.
That's an objection.
Sustained.
Okay. I went to your ex-girlfriend's house and I asked for help.
I don't know. I wasn't there. All I know is this. When I went around there to see when my brother told me that you tried to throw the TV set through the window, he stopped you, that you took the baby out into the cold, wet weather and went someplace. When I went back to Kathleen's next door, you were there, and I overheard you on the phone with a police conversation saying I was a large black man chasing you around the house in a murderous rage, which was an absolute lie. And what you were doing was setting the Portland police up to come and shoot me. So what I did is I came out of the house and waited for the police to come. Put my hands in the air and said, my name is Wardell Gibson, do you want to kill me? And they said, what is going on here? I said, I don't know. She's gone crazy, maybe postpartum or something. And then you came out and said that what you were going to do is to put me away in prison. I says, for what? So the police came and said, what's going on? They sat down, they talked to me. I walked away, said that she's got the baby, she can stay in the house. I'll move out until this, or leave until this thing cools off. And they let me walk away, and I did. And the next thing I heard from you, I was reserved with one of the many restraining orders that you have against me for no reason.
You remember the restraining order hearing with Judge Lakeman. I assume it lasted 2.5 hours.
Which
Yeah.
judge heard that one?
Judge Bradley Leckman in Washington County. He's an international judge.
International judge?
Yeah, I never heard of that, but
Neither have I.
apparently.
He was a judge pro tem.
Oh, okay.
So you remember that hearing?
Oh, I most definitely remember it.
2.5 hour hearing.
I don't remember how long it was, but if you say it was 2.5 hours, I have no objection to that.
And what was the result of that hearing? Was the restraining order put in place?
There was a restraining order, I believe had already been filed. And at that point, you had filed a restraining order, and that was the hearing for that restraining order, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and I was successful in attaining that restraining order.
Anybody can get a restraining order on anybody for anything whatsoever.
You had 2.5 hours in court to argue your case, and you still were not successful. The restraining order was put in place, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Objection. I'm going to object to that because I don't recall that's how that actually happened. I know that there was a restraining order that was put in place, but it's my recollection that we've been in court so many times. My recollection.
I have all the documents.
I can't remember. I don't know.
There was a restraining order hearing. It lasted 2.5 hours, and a restraining order was put in place. You're not disputing that?
I'm not sure. I can't remember. I know there was a restraining order. The details of that, if you say so, I don't think I'll argue because there was a
Exhibit
restraining
number
order.
1 is the 2005 restraining order from Washington County. I'd like to put into evidence.
Show Mr. Gibson. The restraining order itself. Number 1.
No, based on this, you're leaving at the lighthouse in Hillsborough. This was sometime after that.
I don't know what she's showing you, but I've got exhibit number 1 that's been marked and asked to be admitted by Miss Martin, and there's apparently a couple pages missing because no judge signed this one either. So
Right. I don't know
not
what this
admitted.
is.
So in your recollection, there was no restraining order put in place?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I don't recall that particular paperwork. I do remember that there was a restraining order. I was served with papers after the incident where you tried to crash the TV through the window, and you called the police and lied to them about me chasing you around the house. Then what happened was, a few days later, I'm at home and I get served with a restraining order against you. Okay? Now, 33 days later, all I recall is I had an action in the court that I could go and see my son at this place in Hillsborough, and that's what I recall about that.
Okay. I would like to put into evidence Respondent's Exhibit number 4, which is the transcript of Judge Leckman's ruling at that restraining order hearing.
Show the witness the exhibit you want admitted,
This is
please.
a certified transcript that I paid to have transcribed from the audio file of that hearing. I was going to ask Mr. Gibson to read it into the record. Is that not allowed?
Well, it's 10 pages long, isn't it?
Pretty significant day in our life.
No, he's not going to read the entire 12-page transcript into the record. You can examine him in regarding specific portions of it that you wish to.
Okay. Are you accepting this as evidence, Your Honor? I can go forward?
Mr. Gibson, have you had an opportunity to review it?
There's a lot here. I have no idea whether or not this is the true and actual transcript. It's not signed by any judge. It may or may not have been what happened. She's got somebody down here, Janice Brown, a transcriber. I have no idea who this is.
It is a legally transcribed document, Your Honor. As far as I know, it's admissible in court.
Who authenticated it to be legal and so forth? You haven't gotten past the evidence rule 904 in regards to its authentication. Did you move to have it admitted as an exhibit 30 days prior to this hearing without the necessity of authentication?
No, I understood the court transcribers, because I asked for this for a court hearing, and I was told this was a legal presentable document, so apparently...
The objection sustained. It's not admissible. Failure to authenticate the document.
Okay. So you're denying that this even happened? You don't remember being in the courtroom
I know that we
with
had a
Judge
court
Leckman?
proceed. Are you going to let me, may I answer the question?
The question was, you're denying that this even happened.
No, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying this is not my recollection of events. I don't know what this is. We did have a court proceeding, yes.
Why do you feel the restraining order was put in place against you?
You really want me to answer that?
You feel Judge Leckman was inept in his ability to try the case, and you were
I'm not in the
wrong.
position to qualify the ineptness or the, his ability as a judge as far as I know, and he's not really a judge to begin with. He's an acting judge, that's from what I understood. So I have no idea what his law degrees are and his practice and all. I have no idea. But I know that we were sitting there in this courtroom, and this was the guy that was talking to us. So, but what this is, I don't know.
So, after that hearing, a restraining order was put in place. You received 2 years probation, jail time served.
You're testifying. Ask a question, please.
What was the result of that restraining order being in place? Was there any jail time?
No.
Had you been to jail?
No.
You were never arrested by the
Not
court?
with this.
Okay. Okay. Was there probation?
Not because of this restraining order. Not this.
Really?
Really.
Okay, question, please.
Okay, no, so that's a no. There was no probation.
There was probation, but it had nothing to do with that court proceeding.
What was it for?
Well, what it was for is we had an intermediary person that was a go-between so that we could talk about issues concerning our child. As everybody in this courtroom, including the judge, knows, we have difficulty talking to each other. So there was an interim person that was put in place. I had a business trip to San Francisco, and I had asked the intermediary to call you to see if it would be okay, since we were having some sort of visitation, that I could take Ezekiel with me to San Francisco on a business trip so that I could show him off to my family, in particular my sister, who had never seen him. And you flew off the handle and said no, that she was an advocate for me instead of for Ezekiel, and from now on, the only person that could be the intermediary between us would be Patrick McEachran, and of course that wasn't going to work. And so I said no. And so then you said then you wouldn't be able to see your child anymore. And that's when I picked up the phone and I told you that there was no power on earth that was going to keep me from ever having anything to do with my child. After that, you went to the court and said I had broken the restraining order. So I get a call from my office in Clackamas saying that some police officers from Hillsborough were there and wanted to talk to me about an incident in Hillsborough. They were on the phone. And I said, what incident? I haven't been to Hillsborough. And they recanted that, so what do you want to talk to me? Let's talk. And they said, no, we need to talk to you in person in case there is a Miranda event. I said, a Miranda event? What, you want to arrest me for what? What have I done? And that's what precipitated all of that. But it had nothing to do with this, is my recollection.
Okay, so after the hearing with Judge Leckman, a restraining order was put in place and you were told not to contact me, is that correct?
I didn't. The intermediary did.
Okay. So at no time during the restraining order did you contact me or call me or violate the restraining order?
No, I didn't.
You did not?
The intermediary did. That's how we contact. That's how we were able to communicate. But I never called
I
you.
understand. I would like to put into evidence the exhibit number 6, which is the 2005 police report.
Yeah, I remember some of this outrageous things that you did, yes. But it's not exactly this. Is partially true and partially not true. It's kind of like Wicked, you know, the truth and the untruth, spinning in a ball of confusion so that nobody can discern what's what. That's what this is.
It's a police report.
And my recollection of the events of this was that I had gone back into court to have the ability to see my son. And I was granted the ability to see my son and to be able to take him to church. And so we had been in court like on a Thursday or a Thursday, and I was granted the ability on that next Sunday to pick Ezekiel up, and I did with a friend of mine, Taryn Mahuna. And we went to the Starbucks on Macadam to pick him up, and I saw you with some man pushing Ezekiel in a stroller. And we were waiting to do the change off at the Starbucks. There was 2 squad cars there, which is not unusual to me. Cops, donut shops, coffee shops, no big deal. And then you ran over to the police car, pointed at me, and I said to Taryn, I think it's time to go. So we went up Macadam, and then all these cops followed us. And then they pulled me over and accused me of kidnapping my son when I had a court order that said I could get them. And you were sitting there laughing at me in front of Ezekiel that I was being arrested. So what happened then is the cop that arrested me was taking me out to the Multnomah County, Washington County line where there would be a transfer. And that cop said, there's something wrong with this. I says, yeah, there's something wrong with this. I haven't done anything. I just was in court, and I got the right to see my son, and I've been charged with kidnapping. And that's when he told him, no, this is about some incident in Hillsborough. I said, I haven't been to Hillsborough. And what that incident was, as you say in here with Kathy Reed, when I'd asked Kathy Reed, the intermediary, to ask you if I could take Ezekiel to California, which is in here, you got upset and said that she no longer would be Ezekiel's advocate, and that the only way that I could see, and I see that you have Lenny Slider, he's in the courtroom, who is Ezekiel's godfather. There was some times when he intervened and had visits, but unlike what it says here, you said that the only person that I could go between to be able to see Ezekiel was with Patrick. And I said that would not happen. That's when Lenny was the one that came up. So what happened was on Father's Day, on a Sunday. First of all, on a Thursday or Friday, I get a call from my employer saying that there were police officers at my employer's and they were looking for me. And so, looking for me for what? And so they got on the phone. They said that they wanted to talk to me about an incident in Hillsborough. Well, I knew I hadn't been to Hillsborough, so it was bogus. So what's this about? And that's when they said that they needed to talk to me in person in the event that there was a Miranda event. Well, I know what Miranda is. They wanted to arrest me. I says, no, I'm not doing that. But what I will do is I'll meet with you in my attorney in Hillsborough at the courthouse, but not at the jail. And so she said, fine. And we picked a day, which I believe would have been Tuesday or Wednesday of that next week, that I was going to voluntarily come in. But what happened on Saturday, I had this, I'm a Christian, and I had this dream about not going to church that Sunday, so I didn't go. Good thing I didn't, because on Father's Day, on that Sunday, you had the Portland police come to my church to try to arrest me. They came to the church for the 11 o'clock service, and then I guess they came again at the 6 o'clock service, but I wasn't there. That next Monday, this police officer calls me on the phone, wanted to know, do we still have our appointment for Wednesday? And I said, not after the crap that you pulled on me at my church on Sunday. And she says, what are you talking about? And I told her what had happened. She said that she had been off all weekend and didn't know anything about that might have been something that was instigated by Miss Martin. So what you did at my church is tried to have me arrested on Father's Day. Thank you very much, but it didn't work.
So in that police report, the police officer reports listening to the message that you left on my cell phone To the threatening message you left on my cell phone, your testimony was you never called me. Is the police officer lying?
No, I didn't call you. Kathy Reed called you. I didn't call you. I have never called you when there was a
That's
restraining
not the
order.
police officer's testimony.
Well, that police officer is not here, is he?
His
Is he?
report
Where is he?
is in evidence.
No, his report isn't in evidence.
Oh, it isn't? Okay.
I was waiting for Mr. Gibson to finish reading it, and then he started it on his
Well,
testimony.
that's just it. So,
So are you objecting or not to
I'm
the admissibility of the police?
objecting to this as hearsay.
Objection sustained. Hasn't been authenticated. It's not admissible.
You are married to Lynn Gibson, is that correct?
I don't know.
I'm sorry?
I don't know.
Okay. Who is Lynn Gibson?
I was married to Lynn Gibson.
And you don't know whether you're still married?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you have contact with Lynn Gibson?
Frequently. She goes to my church.
You ever drive her car when you don't have one of your own?
I have.
Borrow money from her?
I have got loans from her, and she's got them from me reciprocally.
So it's fair to say that you and Lynn have stayed connected, even though the marriage isn't really marriage anymore.
No, that's not fair to say. We hadn't had any contact with each other for probably 20, 25 years. Until recently.
How recently?
When she was inquiring as to what happened to Ezekiel. Where is he? And I says, well, this thing is going on, and I don't, because she's, when I had visitation, once or twice at church, she would see Ezekiel with me. And so when she didn't see Ezekiel anymore, she wondered, where is he? What's going on? And I told her what was going on with this proceeding.
Okay. So last Christmas, after a restraining order was put in place, you had Lynn Gibson deliver gifts to our home for Ezekiel, is that correct?
Yes, you sent a list by email of things that Ezekiel needed.
Okay, that's a yes. Next question.
Okay. On his birthday in March, you had Lynn Gibson showed up for the party, and she brought gifts on your behalf.
I'm
Is
a
that
good
correct?
father, and I wanted him to have birthday presents, if that's your
Okay,
question.
and then again after that, I contacted her saying Ezekiel could use some new clothes, and she came again to my home to deliver things that you and her had purchased for Ezekiel. Is that
If you're
correct?
saying that I'm providing for my son, yes.
What I'm asking is, has Lynn Gibson been involved in your life since this restraining order was put in place?
Well, Lynn Gibson has facilitated your request to get certain items from me for Ezekiel. Ezekiel is my son.
Yes, the answer is yes or no.
Yes.
Thank you. Next question.
You're aware that her and I have been communicating this whole time?
Yes.
Okay. Is she going to testify?
I think you have called her as a witness. Whether she's going to testify or not, I don't know. She wondered why you would call her as a witness.
Okay. How about Corinne Gibson? Who is Corinne Gibson?
Corinne Gibson is my niece.
Is she still living in your home?
She lives in my home, in the lower part of my home, yes.
And so she has witnessed you parenting. She's in the home when you had visits with Ezekiel. She has intimate information about your...
Corinne Gibson is his first cousin.
Will she
Of many
testify?
cousins that he's no longer able to see because you won't allow it.
Is she going to testify about the time she did witness your parenting?
Not that I'm aware of.
And so do you have any family members that have been involved when you were parenting Ezekiel that are going to give us a peek about your life as a parent?
My life as a parent has been at long distance because of you.
Well, you had visitation every other weekend while Corinne Gibson was living in the house. Is that correct?
Sure.
Taryn Mahuna, in her the affidavit that she filed, said that you two were intimate and your relationship lasted about a year and a half. Can you tell us what time frame, what period that was?
Objections, no relevance.
There's, to me, Your Honor, she was co-parenting the child. She took the child with Mr. Gibson all the way to Seattle. She was part of our life, when we were getting along, and there is relevance, Your Honor.
Objections overruled. Ask the question, please. What's the question?
What was the time period? Ms. Mahuna stated you had an intimate relationship for 1.5 years. Can you tell me when that was?
The intimate relationship? I don't remember.
Okay. You noted in your first filing on August 8th, 2008, that you claimed that I lived with you from the time the restraining order ran out, which would have been January of 2006, until I fled to Arizona. So you told the court that we lived together as a family for 2.5 years following when the restraining order ran out.
You know, I don't know if it was 2.5 years. It was on and off. You would come and go as the wind blows. You're
That
there
wasn't your
sometimes.
testimony.
I don't recall. I know that you were there for some times and for some times. This has been going on for all of Ezekiel's life. What dates there were that you were there and not, who knows? I can't remember.
We have co-parented our son for the past 2 years without incident. So you're claiming that for 2 to 2.5 years after this restraining order ran out, we lived together.
We lived together from some time, whether it was 2 and 2.5 years. If that's my testimony, I'm not sure. Like I said, we have lived together on and off. At some of those times we got along. Most of those times we did not. So I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Your filing, you said that we were together during that time frame, which is also the same time frame you had an intimate relationship with Ms. Tahuna. I also lived on O Street in Vancouver after the restraining order ran out for 10 months. I lived with Ms. Bouchard for 6 months. I lived in 2 different motels.
Are you testifying?
How could I have lived with you for 2.5 years?
Objection, she's testifying.
Okay.
Sustained.
Okay.
Question.
Are you aware that I lived on O Street with Nicole Leslie for 10 months in Vancouver?
In Vancouver. I'm aware that you lived someplace in Vancouver trying to follow me around as I was living in Vancouver, and maybe that was on O Street. You did live there. For how long you lived there, I'm not sure. But yeah, you did live on O Street.
Remember picking up Ezekiel for...
Yeah, I remember I'd pick up Ezekiel at that address. There seemed to be something that we had some kind of moderation so that I could come there and pick him up. I'm not sure. I don't recall exactly what the circumstances are. But if you're asking me, did you live at O Street for some period of time? Yes, I never went into the house. I do remember picking him up out on the sidewalk or dropping him off there, something like that.
Okay. In your original filing, you wrote, I was uncertain what to do and panicked. Let's see, I'm trying to see where we are here. It's your testimony that all of my mental illness or my angst was because I was not going to get rich off my autobiography, Eating My Way to Heaven. Is that your testimony?
That you're not going to get rich off of...
You continue to note in filings that she didn't get rich off her book, and that's why she's, psychotic and unstable. Was that your belief?
I have no idea why you're off your rocker.
Okay. In 2003, prior to Ezekiel's coming onto the scene, did you travel with me to Los Angeles?
Yes.
What was the purpose of that visit?
This was prior to the birth of Ezekiel, are you talking about?
Yes.
You wanted to appear on a talk show, I think Phil Donahue or something like that, or I don't remember. You've been wanting me to appear on so many of them, even up until the last couple of weeks ago. You've been wanting me to appear on some talk show out of New York City, some show in Los Angeles, some show in New York, and on and on and on, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, I guess.
So if I helped you with your memory, do you recall traveling to Los Angeles with me to help me promote my book with Dr. Phil?
Yes.
So you weren't objecting. You were helping me promote my book, and yet It's your
No.
testimony that...
No, I was not helping you promote your book. I was helping you because we were together, and this is what you wanted to do, and to try to accommodate you. I was willing to do that. I hadn't even read the book at that time. Excerpts here and there, but I had never really read the book until all this started. And then I read the book, and I said, oh, my God.
So you traveled with me to Los Angeles to help me promote my book, but you'd never read it.
I hadn't read it, no.
Okay.
I'd read excerpts of it, because if you recall...
Next question, please.
All right. The day that Ezekiel was born, well,
That's a
actually,
good place to stop for the evening.
yeah,
The day Ezekiel was born.
I'm great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll see you in the morning at 9 o'clock.
May I leave this file, Your Honor, or do I have to haul all this home and back?
Well, our security is we will lock the courtroom.
I'm confident it'll be secure here. I just really don't
I'm
need
not
this.
guaranteeing it. I'm just telling you that my assistant will lock the courtroom, but there are cleaning people that come in, so I can't guarantee.
I understand.
If you want to leave it, it's your decision.
I object, Your Honor.
Why?
Because you may have a cleaning person that comes in here and goes through
Recess
some
until
things.
tomorrow morning.
I will take everything with me, Your Honor. If we have more evidence to log in the morning, do I need to be here at 8:30? If I have fresh evidence to log in the morning, do I need to be here at 8:30?
Depends on how much.
Okay.